Hello, even. I hope everybody's having a good Friday. Yeah, work's done. Woo! Weekend. Um, weekend. It's gonna be a good weekend. Um, gonna celebrate the anniversary and kicking us off though with some Latin. We're gonna do the next 2 lessons and look more at those subjunctive forms. We met the subjunctive last time. It is a mood that is often used in subordinate clauses, so not the main verb of the sentence, but some secondary verb. But it can also be used independently sometimes for things like wishes, encouragement, conditions. Woo! 20 months! Woo! He's shaking his head at me. Not quite as exciting as being married for 12 months, but it's still pretty exciting. And thank you for your sub. All right. The first subjunctive is formed. The present subjunctive is formed from the present stem, a particular vowel, and then our MST mustis ent or arvis termini enter personal ending, and that vowel is we fear a liar. Ta-da! The imperfect subjunctive is even easier. You take the present active infinitive, so the second principal part. Sorry, the cat's food dispenser freaked me out for a moment. It sounds weird with headphones on. You take the present active infinitive, which is the second principal part, and add the personal endings. MST mustis ent, arvis termur mini enter. That's it. You don't actually need to learn anything new for the imperfect subjunctive, simply that this is the imperfect subjunctive. No, that was not Punch making rice. That was the cat feeder going. So now our cat will be 50% less annoying, but still annoying until he gets the other part of his dinner. So I apologize if he's being noisy. The imperfect subjunctive is regular in the verb sum. Sum's present active infinitive is esse, and then MST mustis ent. Very nice. Now, what's tricky, and so we're just going to walk through what our dude says, is the sequence of tenses, aka which tense of the subjunctive do you use when? All right. This can be tricky for people. So, Bushido! Hello, Bushido-san. I hope you're having a good Friday. Friday est indeed. Unless it is Australia, in which in Australia, Saturday est. Perfect. Okay. So, the 3 great distinctions of time are present, past, and future. All tenses referring to the present or future are primary tenses. I don't know why they decided that would be primary. I guess because when people are learning languages, they do present first. It's just easier that way. So they get to be primary tenses. Those referring to the past time are called secondary tenses because they happen in the past. Don't know. It is a very common law of language that in a complex sentence, the tense of the dependent clause should be the same as in the principal or main clause. So he says that he is coming. The main verb is says, and then the indirect statement is coming, also in present. So they're both in the primary tenses. So then if we change he says to he said, we would want the is coming to be in a secondary tense. So he said that he was coming. This is what English naturally does. It's Friday in EST. Ha 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 ha. Oh, I get it. What if he said that he would be coming? That's future, would be. Oh, he said that he would be coming. Right, it does create that sense of uncertainty about the tense that you're in. So if in your conversation you're in the middle of the party and you're really wondering where John is, you say, well, he said he'd be here. He said he would be here. But you could say, he said he was coming. I don't know where he is. Either one would be okay. It just depends on how ambiguous you want to be. Yeah. Should I go for food now? That would be okay with me. Said is still secondary. That is true. But in the case of he said he would be here, you're using the subjunctive because would is subjunctive. You wouldn't say he said he will be here. That we would never say. You wouldn't use that future with the secondary tense. But you could use a secondary subjunctive would with the secondary tense. Does that make more sense? Yep, exactly, Ross. He said he would be here versus he says he will be here. So if you mix that up, it starts to sound less right in English, which is how native speakers generally figure out what to say. All right. And you probably wouldn't say he says he would be here. He says he would be here. We're mixing up the primary and secondary subjunctive / future thing. Oh my goodness. Oh no, we're getting a cat. An angry cat. Because he hasn't gotten his wet food yet. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. He's trying to keep you out of his way while he goes for food. So I'm going to keep you here as long as I can. All right. Kitty. All right. So this following of a tense by another of the same kind is called a tense sequence, or sequence of tenses. In Latin, the law of tense sequence is obeyed with considerable regularity, especially when an indicative is the principal clause. Especially when an indicative in the principal clause is followed by a subjunctive in the dependent clause. All right. A primary tense of the indicative is followed by a primary tense of the subjunctive. So again, a present or a perfect subjunctive. A secondary tense of the indicative is followed by a secondary tense of the subjunctive. So an imperfect. Should I let the fudge monster go? You're getting squirmy, buddy, and I think he's safely outside, so there you go. So here's your nice chart for the sequence of tenses in Latin. So if the principal verb is primary, so present, future, or future perfect, then the dependent clause is either going to have a present subjunctive, which means the action is still continuing, or a perfect subjunctive, saying that the action has been completed. I'll think of a good example once we learn the perfect subjunctive. Right now, I'm not going to go into that because right now I can't think of any good ideas. I guess indirect question. We haven't learned indirect question yet, but it is when you are using a verb of the head and then some sort of question. So we'll go back to this question about did he say that he will be here? did he say that he would be here? So did say past tense, and then would be here, a incomplete action. So that would be perfect secondary tense here, and then an imperfect incomplete subjunctive. If you said, is he saying that he'll be here? Or is he saying that he is coming? I guess that's what we're doing. Is he saying that he's coming? Present verb, present subjunctive. In English, we just use the indicative with indirect questions. But in Latin, they use a subjunctive. But if we go to our, I guess we should probably find a question word. That'd be easier, isn't it? I don't know what time it is. I do not know present what time it is, present subjunctive. I did not know what time it was. Imperfect or perfect tense, did not know what time it was. Continuing action, imperfect subjunctive. But if I said, I do not know what time it was, if somebody asked me, something that happened yesterday, what time did Punch stream yesterday? I don't know presently what time it was yesterday. Completed action, so that'd be a present main verb and a perfect subjunctive. Or if yesterday I did not know what time Punch had streamed Monday, then that would be a perfect primary verb and then a pluperfect subjunctive. Completed time. Did he say that he will be here? Works. That's true. That's actually true. That's why the indirect questions in English get a little bit more vague because we use the indicative in English. But what time did you travel to next week? Yeah, a lot of the tense puzzles sound awkward when you're using examples. What if last week you did not know what time Punch would stream yesterday? Then it would be an incomplete or continuing action. So last week I did not know when he would play. So that would be primary tense perfect. I did not know last week. Then incomplete continuing imperfect subjunctive, what time he would play. It gets lost a little in the translation, again, because we use different ways of constructing the indirect question, but that's how you would form it in Latin. Okay, so sequence of tenses, primary tenses are followed by primary tenses, and secondary by secondary. Cool. So with our purpose clauses, he sends or will have sent men in order to lay waste to the fields. So even though this is present, this is future perfect, they all take a present subjunctive because the purpose is incomplete by its very nature. You are doing something in the main clause so that something will happen in the future. So purpose clauses will always be either present or imperfect. So imperfect if you're using secondary tenses in the principal clause. He was sending, used to send, he sent, perfect, he had sent, pluperfect, men to lay waste to the fields, translated the same in English, but you use the imperfect subjunctive in Latin. Got all that? Cool. Cool. What about if we do have to use perfect or pluperfect subjunctives, right? The purpose clauses do not, but other clauses do, like indirect questions. Yeah, totally got all that. Easy peasy. Primary, primary, secondary, secondary. So thankfully, perfect and pluperfect are much like the imperfect subjunctive, not super hard. They do have, of course, a different structure in active and passive because the perfect and pluperfect active have different forms in active and passive. The active uses a third principal part, and then est it, imus istis erunt. The passive uses a fourth principal part, and then a form of sum. For pluperfect, it's eram eras erat, and perfect sum ss sumus ss sunt. Not combined, just hanging out together. The pluperfect active is eram eras erat, eramus eratus erant also. So, for perfect subjunctive active, you use that third principal part, and then ERI, and then our personal ending, MST mustis ent. So erim eris erit, erimus eritus erint. Okay. For the pluperfect subjunctive active, you use that third principal part, and then ISSE, and then the MST mustis ent. In case you've forgotten, if you're wondering where that ISSE came from, the third principal part plus isse combined in one unit is the perfect infinitive to have loved, to have warned, to have ruled, to have seized, to have heard. So much like the imperfect subjunctive is formed from the perfect infinitive, the pluperfect subjunctive is formed from the perfect infinitive. It's a very similar model. For perfect subjunctive passive, you take that fourth principal part and then you use the present subjunctive of to be. In the perfect indicative passive, you use the present indicative of to be. Now you use the present subjunctive of to be. Makes sense. Sim sis sit, simus situs sint. For the pluperfect subjunctive passive, you're going to take that perfect passive infinitive, the fourth principal part plus esse, which is the infinitive of to be, and then add your personal endings, MST mustis ent. Okay? It all follows really straightforward patterns in the perfect. The perfect is your friend. It is the best system. You should love it. The perfect and pluperfect subjunctive of irregular sum are fuerim eris erit, erimus eritus erint, fuissem st mustis ent, regular. The irregular verbs are regular in the perfect system. It's the best. So, what the heck is a substantive clause of purpose? Which is our final topic today, apparently. That's an excellent question, although if Punch doesn't get back when I finish, maybe we'll do one more. I've never heard of a substantive clause of purpose before, so I'm going to learn this too. A substantive clause is a clause used like a noun. Oh, this is an indirect command. Oh, I've never heard it called this before. Okay, so a substantive clause is a clause used like a noun. So what that means is instead of taking an accusative direct object, it takes a whole phrase. So he ordered dogs around. Okay, great. Accusative direct object. But you can also say he ordered them to call on him. Use a whole clause as the object of the verb. All right. Now, when it's an indirect statement, it takes the accusative infinitive construction. He said blah, 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 blah. Instead of using the accusative words or stuff, He said that he was going to pick up dinner. Latin would take accusative for the second subject, he, and the infinitive for what he's doing, picking up dinner. Perfect system is the best. Yep, it is great. Thanks for that ad. All right. Now, that indirect statement is only for verbs of speaking, hearing, thinking. If you want to command someone indirectly, then you use a different verb. I mean, a verb construction. So the Latin often uses the subjunctive in substantive clauses, and this marks an important difference between the two languages. The rule: substantive clauses of purpose. A substantive clause of purpose with the subjunctive is used as the object of verbs of commanding, urging, asking, persuading, or advising, where in English we usually have the infinitive. The only exception I can think of is the verb eubeo, he orders, that does take an accusative infinitive. Everything else takes the subjunctive. So that's why usually when people learn it is called the indirect command. It helps to differentiate it as its own thing. So, the general ordered the soldiers to run. We're using the infinitive. Imperator militibus imperavit ut currerant. Currerant. So we've got the imperator. We have our verb of commanding, impero. We have the dative, because you command your dative, militibus. We have our ut, setting up that it's an indirect command, and then our subjunctive. He urged them to resist bravely. Hortatus est, he urged, ut fortiter resisterent, that they resist bravely. You'll notice that we've been using those to the imperfect subjunctive because we're in the secondary tense. Hey, Max, thanks for the resub. And thanks for the bits, Roz. I'll use those to buy a beer tonight. Probably. Maybe. We'll see. I'm on the fence about going out tonight. Number 3. He asked them to give the children food. Petivet ut liberis cibum darent. He sought that they should give food to the children. But in English, again, we just use the infinitive. But Latin, ut plus a subjunctive. This is, as the book said, one of the key differences, this indirect command. He will persuade us not to set out. Nobis persuadebit, ne proficiscamer. He will persuade us that we not go out. On the fence about going out sounds like Garfield when he wants to sing. He advises us to remain at home. Monet ut domi maneba. He urges that we remain at home. Right? Indirect command, ut plus the subjunctive. Right? So here are some verbs that usually take that indirect command. Hortor, to urge, impero, to order, with the dative of the person ordered. Moneo, advise, peto, quairo, rogo, to ask or seek, persuadeo, persuade, postulo, demand, suadeo, advise. And again, our exception that I mentioned before, eubeo. Even though it's an order word, this one takes accusative infinitive. Eubeo eum venere, I order him to come, versus impedo eo ut veniat, I order to him that he should come. Right? English, we can translate them the same. Right? Doesn't it sound like that, Ross? Unintended, right? Alright. Why eubeo does this versus the other verbs, I really don't know. But it does. And you, if you're doing Latin to English, might just want to do eubeo so you don't mess it up, but it's good. It's all good. Oh, look! The Legio iter facit. The Legion makes a journey. Oh, verbs of fearing. Ooh. You know, I was going to stop, but I might do verb of fearing, mostly because it's really short, surprisingly. And then next time we'll just start fresh with participles, which is a big one, a huge one. So let's go ahead and do verbs of fearing. So there is such a thing as the subjunctive of possum. Learn it. I love that he just gives you the place to go learn it. It follows the same form patterns of to be. So once you got to be memorized, you'll have possum memorized. And possum, again, means to be able. So it's really just a form of to be able. So verbs of fearing. This is another type of subordinate clause that takes a subjunctive. I am afraid that or lest something happens. You would use the verb of fearing, ut or ne, and then a subjunctive. All right. We have learned that what we want done or not done is expressed in Latin by a subjunctive clause of purpose. This class also belongs clauses after verbs of fearing, for we fear either that something will happen or that it will not. And we either want it to happen or we do not. If we want a thing to happen and fear that it will not, the purpose clause is introduced by ut. There's a little bit of a reversal when you use ut versus ne in verbs of fearing. If we do not want it to happen and fear that it will, we use ne. Owing to the difference between the English and Latin idiom, we translate ut as that not and ne as lest. So usually ne is not, it's our negation, but when you're negating something that you fear, it becomes the thing that you want it to happen. You have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics. Ring-tailed possum. All right, I fear, timeo, classic verb of fearing. It means I fear that he will come. Or really, that he will not come, because it's ut, and so we translate it that not. But if we were to say timeo ne veniat, I fear lest he comes. I fear that he comes. There's no more examples. Okay. So verbs of fearing are followed by a substantive clause of purpose, introduced by ut or ne, ut meaning that not, or ne meaning lest. It is the reverse of every other clause with how you translate it. Okay. So let's do an example or two. Caesar verbater ut supplicium captivorum Gallis placet. Caesar used to fear. So ut, we have to translate as that not. That the appeal of the captives would not be pleasing to the Gauls. Romani ipsi magnopere verebantur, ne Helvetii iter per provinciam faceret. The Romans themselves greatly were fearing lest, or that, the Helvetii would make a journey through the province. Timebant ut satis re frumentariae miti posset. They were afraid that they would not be that enough of supplies would not be able to be sent. So just translate it reverse of what you think for verbs of fearing. Verbs of fearing, reverse. Maybe because you're afraid of it, it's scary, because it's doing the opposite of what you think it's going to do. I don't know. Honestly, you don't see oot used very much with verbs of fearing. I feel like you normally see nay. But yeah, if we want a thing to happen and fear it will not, we use oot. If we want it to happen and fear that it will, if we do not want a thing to happen and fear that it will, we use nay. The way that I've seen it broken down in some textbooks before is, I am afraid, may, well, let's use this example right here. So Caesar's saying, I am afraid. I don't even like that sentence. We're going to use number 3, because that one makes, no, number 2. The Romans say, they are afraid, and then a kind of wish, may the Helvetii not make the road, or the journey. So you use a nay. And then on the opposite, they are afraid, let enough supplies be sent. So your wish is positive, so it's taking an oot because you're afraid that your wish won't come true. It's a little circular, because that's what happens when a language constructs things the opposite of everything else that it does. But that's it for today. Now you know all the subjunctives. You're set to rule the world, except we don't know participles yet, and they're kind of the most important part in Latin. So next Friday, we will learn participles. It's gonna be a thing. Aw, goodness. Look forward to it. Big chapter. Lesson 66. We're almost done, too, so good job. All right. I'll rule all the non-participulate world then. That's probably wise. It's simpler that way. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody. I'll see you, I'm sure, at some point here or there. Thanks for coming by.